There is a place in Louisiana where the land gives out before the road does. You drive onto a thin ribbon of concrete, and for 24 miles there is nothing but open water and sky. You don't think about what's beneath you. You don't think about the fact that this whole coast is sinking. But it is, and the bridge is sinking with it. It's called the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, and it's the longest continuous bridge over water anywhere on Earth. Guinness gives it the record, almost 24 miles of it, laid low and flat across a shallow, brackish lake, connecting Metairie on the south shore to Mandeville on the north. Two parallel spans, one built in 1956 and the other in 1969, riding on more than 9,500 concrete pilings, driven down into the mud. Tens of thousands of people cross it every single day. Commuters, mostly. People who have made this drive so many times they no longer see it. And that's the thing about this bridge. It doesn't feel like it's failing. It feels permanent. It feels like the one fixed thing in a landscape that is quietly coming apart. Before we go further, if you like the kind of story that makes you look twice at something you thought was solid, take a second to subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel. And while you're here, I want to know one thing. Have you ever driven the causeway or crossed any bridge that made your stomach drop a little? Drop it in the comments. Now, let's get into it. To understand why this bridge is in trouble, you have to understand the ground it stands on, or rather the ground it doesn't. Southern Louisiana is not old, solid rock. It is the Mississippi River Delta. Thousands of years of soft mud, silt, sand, and rotting plant matter, dumped layer on layer where the river met the Gulf. It is some of the softest, wettest, least stable ground a person can build a city on. And for most of human history, nobody tried, because the river kept it alive. Every spring, the Mississippi flooded and spread a fresh coat of sediment across the whole coast, rebuilding the land as fast as it settled. The delta was sinking the entire time. It just didn't matter, because it was being refilled. Then we built the levees. Starting in earnest after the Great Flood of 1927, engineers walled the Mississippi in with hundreds of miles of levees to stop it from flooding towns and farms. It worked, but it also cut the delta off from the one thing keeping it above water. The river now shoots all that sediment straight off the edge of the continental shelf into deep water, where it does no good at all. And the land it used to feed just keeps doing what soft, wet ground does when nothing replenishes it. It compacts, it settles, it sinks. Here is the number that should stop you. Across coastal Louisiana, the land is sinking at an average rate of about half an inch every year. That doesn't sound like much until you hear the comparison. It is roughly 4 times faster than the global rate of sea level rise. This coast is not slowly slipping under the ocean. By the standards of the planet, it is dropping like a stone. And in places, it's far worse than the average. In New Orleans itself, satellite radar found parts of the city sinking 6 millimeters a year on average, and in some spots near the levees, up to 29 millimeters a year. That's more than an inch every year, year after year. It is one of the reasons Hurricane Katrina was so catastrophic. As the ground drops, the levees protecting the city effectively get shorter, and the fastest sinking neighborhoods turned out to be exactly the ones that flooded worst. Scientists studying that data used a chilling phrase for those low spots. They called them death traps. Zoom out from the city, and the scale gets almost hard to hold in your head. Since the 1930s, Louisiana has lost around 2,000 square miles of coastal marsh to subsidence and erosion. An area the size of the state of Delaware, gone, turned from solid ground into open water within a single human lifetime. Louisiana loses a chunk of itself roughly the size of a football field on a regular, ongoing basis. This is not a forecast. This is not a model of the year 2100. This is happening right now, today, while you're reading this. And the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway runs straight across the middle of it. Now, here is where I want to be honest with you, because the story is more interesting than a simple one. When they built this bridge, the engineers knew exactly how bad the ground was. The soft lake bed was the single biggest challenge of the entire project. A lot of locals flatly did not believe it could be done. They were convinced the whole thing would just sink into the lake and disappear. So the builders got clever. They developed a brand new kind of foundation for it. Massive hollow cylindrical pilings, 54 inches across, spun in factories using centrifugal force to make concrete strong enough to take 10,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. They mass-produced the pieces on the shore, floated them out on barges, and drove those pilings deep, down past the soft surface mud, toward firmer ground. It was one of the first bridges ever built on a true assembly line, and it became a genuine monument of American engineering. So the bridge itself was designed to fight exactly this problem. The pilings go deep. It is not dissolving into the lake the way those skeptics feared in the 1950s. If it were only the bridge, it might hold that fight for a very long time. But a bridge does not live in isolation. It lives in relation to the water. Engineers have a term for what actually threatens a place like this. They call it relative sea level. The ground sinking and the ocean rising, added together, closing on each other from both directions at once. And on this coast, both are happening fast. The land is dropping about half an inch a year. The Gulf is climbing on top of that. Combined, in the worst hit stretches of the coast, the water is gaining on the land at close to 2/3 of an inch every single year. The causeway sits only about 15 feet above the surface of that lake. And Lake Pontchartrain is not a sealed pond. It's a wide, shallow estuary connected directly to the Gulf of Mexico. When the water comes up, the lake comes up. When a hurricane pushes a storm surge in from the Gulf, the whole lake swells and slaps at the underside of that low, flat deck. The 15 feet of clearance the bridge had when it opened is not a fixed, permanent number. It is a gap that is slowly, quietly closing because the water is rising and the entire platform the bridge is anchored into is going down. That's the real answer to the question in the title. Is the bridge sinking? The deep pilings are holding their fight, but the world the bridge belongs to, the shore it lands on, the city at its foot, the marsh it crosses toward, the ground its whole southern approach is built into, all of it is sinking about half an inch a year, and the Gulf is rising to meet it. Relative to the water it's supposed to stay above, the causeway is losing ground. And it is doing it in a place where the losing accelerates, because the more the marsh disappears, the less land there is to blunt a storm surge, and the more directly that rising water can reach the things we built out there. And here is the part that ties it back to you, the person crossing it. Nobody driving the causeway is thinking about any of this. You get on at Metairie, you point the car north, the land slides away behind you, and for a while there is only that hypnotic gray ribbon, and the water and the horizon that never seems to arrive. Drivers famously lose track of time out there. It is one of the most peaceful drives in America. It feels like the most solid, permanent, unchanging thing in the state. That is the illusion. The bridge is the one part of the scene that looks like it will last forever, laid across a coast that is disappearing faster than almost anywhere else in the country. The people who live closest to it are the ones who have trained themselves hardest not to see it. It's just the drive to work. It's just the lake. The ground under the house is just the ground. The idea that the whole coast is quietly dropping half an inch a year. That the marsh you fished as a kid is open water now. That the levees are effectively sinking as the city inside them sinks faster. That doesn't fit into a Tuesday morning commute. So it gets filed away under things that are somebody else's problem, or the problem of the year 2100, right up until a storm surge or a flood makes it this morning's problem. So here is what this is really about. Not fear. The causeway is a genuine wonder, and it's worth every one of its 24 miles. It's about the gap between how permanent something looks and how much the ground beneath it is actually moving. We built one of the most impressive bridges on Earth, across one of the fastest sinking landscapes on Earth, and then we agreed, all of us, to only look at the bridge, to admire the concrete and ignore the water creeping up its legs. The land was sinking before the first piling went down, and it has never once stopped. The engineers drove their foundations deep and won their piece of the fight. But the lake is patient, the Gulf is patient, and the Delta has been going under, quietly, half an inch at a time. The whole time we've been driving across it and calling it permanent, waiting the way this coast has waited since long before there was anyone here to build a bridge and pretend the ground would hold.